Hey guys, it's Arossavi here with another video for you today, and I want to tell you something that I've been very passionate about the last 4 or so years, in which I haven't made much content apart from some random mashups. I have been into doing writing projects, so screenplays, just writing like world building and stuff like that. It's been really fun, and I haven't really talked about it on this channel, and that's going to stop today because we're going to talk about it in this video. When it comes to video games and the story, I think the gameplay is more important than the story. However, if you have a universe in which you have a lot of rules, a lot of magic, a lot of creatures, something that isn't a normal world setting that is hard to organise, then I think having these underlying rules and a nice way to organise it all is going to be very helpful for you and your project. This is where Brandon Sanderson's Laws of Magic comes in. This video is going to be discussing Brandon Sanderson's Laws of Magic and how to apply them to video games, both in the story and in the gameplay. But I'm mostly going to be focusing on applying it to the gameplay aspect, as this hasn't really ever been discussed, I believe. At least I haven't seen anything on it myself online, and I hope this makes for an interesting and in-depth video that you can enjoy. This video is like a video essay, pseudo discussion video, as I wouldn't mind seeing what you guys have to say about this topic I brought up, and maybe you've got some ideas that I missed out on that you could highlight in the comments section below, and if you do, then I would love to hear what you have to say. I think that's everything I want to discuss here. However, disclaimer, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for both TV shows and video games, so here is the list of things that are going to be spoiled, and I don't want to spoil it for you, so please be aware. If you don't mind being spoiled, then continue watching the video. If you want to play the games, then I would suggest not watching, because I will literally talk about some things in depth about the endings, so please be warned. So anyway, let's begin. Brandon Sanderson is an American fantasy and science fiction writer, his most famous works being Mistborn and writing some of the Wheel of Time novels. He popularised the use of soft and hard magic systems, which we will get to. I will be referring to him as Sanderson for the rest of this, as it feels weird mentioning my name while discussing this. He wrote 3 laws of magic to help people world build and create coherent magic systems in writing. The rules are as followed, and we will go through all of them individually. An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. Limitations over powers, and expand what you already have before you add something new. These laws aren't essential, as Sanderson says. He explains that they are not rules but observations he's made from creating magic systems himself. Before I get into the correlation to video games and these rules, let me tell you about those hard and soft magic systems I briefly mentioned. Soft magic systems are used in the likes of The Lord of the Rings, The Chronicles of Narnia and The Wizard of Oz. Worlds that are filled with magic and leave the reader or viewer, if you're watching the movies, in wonder and make you feel like you're in the fantasy yourself, making it tense by showing that they never know what could be round the corner. Limitations and feats are usually left quite vague in these, however you still don't deny a character's power. You'll also find that novels and media that uses soft magic tends not to use magic to solve conflicts themselves, as it can feel cheap. Hard magic systems are used in the likes of the Avatar franchise, and by that I mean The Last Airbender and not the blue people in the James Cameron film. Full Metal Alchemist, Naruto, and most, if not all, superheroes have magic that is explicitly explained more, usually showing off the limitations of their feats and strengths. So for example, in Avatar you find out that waterbenders need an available source of water to bend and can't just conjure out of thin air. Whereas Uncle Iroh does a great job of explaining firebending.
The breath becomes energy in the body. The energy extends past your limbs and becomes fire.
Gameplay in video games have to use hard magic systems if your game heavily relies on combat. A lot of magic based universes in the gaming world have MP, or magic points, which is consumed usually when a character uses those moves. A lot of video game magic systems are show, not tell. For example, use a health restoring magic. You know how much it costs your character, how much it heals you, if it can heal anyone else, the range and how far your targets can be healed from, how long it takes to cast. Already you're establishing a lot about what the magic can do. You can even use these systems for things that are not magic based, like weapons in a Call of Duty game or other games in the shooting genre. Snipers are for long range, are slow and require precise aim. Shotguns on the other hand are up close and personal. Games like Fortnite have the build function where for either 10 wood, brick or metal you can create a wall, platform, ramp or roof of that said material, with varying degrees of sturdiness depending on the material used, while also being able to edit them in certain ways, like creating a door or a window and so on. This mechanic is the most important to master in my opinion. I know this game has a bad rep because it's filled with a lot of young players, but the game itself is, in my opinion, objectively good. It's got sound controls, a unique mechanic that is very interesting and useful to get good at, an ever-changing roster of weapons and items to use, and a narrative that flows between the seasons of the Battle Royale. Sometimes they release broken stuff, but no game is perfect and they usually address this. As Sanderson said, magic systems aren't about where it comes from, bonus points if it does though, it's about what it can do. That's why video game magic systems are very hard on the spectrum. There can be a soft side to magic in games too, however this is more on the side of the story and world building. If you can't directly use a magic and a character that is non-playable has it, then your character not understanding it as much ties into the knowledge the player also has. Even games that don't have weapons and magic can have a similar type of system. Mirror's Edge, for example, is a platforming game where your character can run, jump, hang and do all sorts of clever movements to traverse the map. The system is in how she does this and shows off their arsenal. These translate so well into the system because of the nature of video games. Using and understanding the tools or magic provided to you as a player to outwit and outplay your opponent is unequivocally going to get you that victory and also provide satisfying gameplay that will keep players invested. But games can have ties to the softer side as well depending on the universe you place your characters and the potential of other characters in the setting. So a new lore is created when creating a magic system in video games and you'll find it is similar to the first one. A player's ability to solve the conflicts with their arsenal is directly proportional to how well the author implements said utensils and a player's understanding of it. Sanderson said when discussing the second law, characters are not their feats, they are their weaknesses and their ethic, what they wouldn't or couldn't do foremost, which holds weight. This has been represented in video games in both the story and directly in the gameplay too. In games like Blue Dragon and a few other RPGs where you have encounters you are unable to win, plus games like Mega Man X with the comparisons made with X and Zero, where as you progress through the game the theme of X becoming stronger is correlated to getting upgrades that make him look more like Zero. Your character's growth from being the weak, limited character you play at the start becomes the powerhouse who has many in-game options and knowledge of the said system that the developers gave you to explore and use as you saw fit. Once unable to defeat the might ahead, now having practiced and cultivated strength, you can overthrow your opposition. You can apply this to more traditional multiplayer games too. Obviously practicing a game is going to improve how well you do, but games like Call of Duty have tiers which unlock new weapons, perks, primary and secondary equipment like grenades, C4 and flashbangs, as well as kill streak unlocks and such. Video games are the only way that applying this system has such a close correlation to a player's experience. Everyone's experience with their potential arsenal is different and it depends on their opinion of said utensil. The journey is more literal and tailored to an individual more, but I would say is undoubtedly there. So how do video games show off your character's feats and limitations? Here's some examples starting with most shooter games like Call of Duty I mentioned before. Every gun has situations where they are better to use, like why would you use a sniper when your opponent stood right in front of you? Even the game's HUD does a great job of showing the limitations of a weapon you have, how many bullets you can have before reloading, those reloading times and so on. Even if your game has full damage, this is another mechanical limitation which players and the creators have to take into account. Mirror's Edge
here we go again.
Asks many questions when you navigate the maps you're provided. How high and far can you jump? What ledges can she grab? How far can your character run up a wall? Can she jump behind herself when grabbing a ledge? These questions are answered by people exploring the assets given to their character and experimenting with the limitations and feats to excel in the missions provided in the game. Lots of systems are not unique. How many games or shows/movies have elemental powers like fire, wind, earth and water in them? And again, how many gun games have snipers, assault rifles, SMGs, etc.? It's not the concept itself that makes it more interesting, it's the player's limitations, costs and weaknesses that do this, as Sanderson said in his essay. If you had an omnipotent character who wins without breaking a sweat, I don't have to tell you that it's going to be boring, and in a multiplayer setting, it's going to cause uproar, understandably. People want a challenge, they want to feel powerful, they want to feel in control, but they want to fight formidable foes where the odds can be stacked against them, but can still be victorious and don't want their victories or failures to feel cheap. However, rewarding players for playing well is something that you could practice. Nothing super broken though, however. Like kill streaks in Call of Duty, levels ups and upgrades are good ways to do this. In a different type of game, bonus levels that are done in the Kingdom Hearts series are really great for rewarding your players for defeating bosses. Giving them more options in combat, better movement options, etc. will keep them invested, and this will also show how far the character has come from the beginning. You can still create characters with immense prowess and still have them be fair and have challenging encounters. Think of Dante from Devil May Cry and Kratos from God of War. Dante being a half demon, half human, and Kratos being a literal god. Yet giving them oppositions that reflect similar potential will create interesting story and gameplay. Imagine the last boss of God of War was a human who Kratos just one-shots. True, it shows the character's ethics and strengths to a certain extent. If this said final boss is satisfying to kill because of the story elements put in, even if he doesn't put up a good fight, then I could see how it could work. But this encounter, in my opinion, is weak. I would create this weird juxtaposition where the other parts of the games were challenging because of the opposition's strength. Even if this guy was commanding them, there would be some dissatisfaction from the players on the gameplay standpoint. There's a reason why so many people dislike the Fallout 3 ending. The boss is weak and the ending itself isn't that satisfying either in most people's opinion. But on the other hand, having a human character destroy them without establishing their strengths with the story and such would create doubt and frustrate a proportionate amount of players, even if the twist wasn't seen coming. Let's look at Arkham Asylum, a great stealth game where you play as Batman outsmarting the opposition, a really fun game, but the last boss felt kinda weak, right? Joker fills himself with loads of Titan formula, and he tries to take you like that in an epic last encounter with the Mad Genius. The gameplay was quite decent, but damn did it feel underwhelming still, right? And what do I think caused this? It just didn't feel like something the Joker would do. He's smart and cunning. He managed to take over all of Arkham Asylum, and to have his so-called diabolical plan end with this seems extremely out of character and underwhelming in the narrative. Lore-wise, this is stupid and doesn't make sense. It's a mix of both that helps create a satisfying conclusion to the story set forth through the challenges they've faced. If done correctly, great story elements can coincide with the gameplay to produce emotionally powerful scenes which cannot be replicated in other forms of media. This can enhance the player's experience in a unique, personal way. Examples include Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, with a scene where you press F to pay respects. A heartfelt video game scene that is referenced a lot in both meme and internet culture to this day. Metal Gear Solid 3, in which you have to pull the trigger on the boss, or letting go of Jenny for the last time in The Darkness 2. There's also the ending sequence to The Last of Us. Joel finds out to create a cure to the infection and save the human race, they would need brain samples of Ellie. This would ultimately end her life as she is immune. Joel doesn't want this to happen, so he kills all the Fireflies, denying the cure to humanity and saving Ellie in the process. The game, however, gives you no choice, this being something that some, if not most players, have to do unwillingly. But watching Joel's development through the game and seeing his journey, his actions aren't justified, but understood. They understand why he chose this path, and the emotional energy from these scenes are something that cannot be replicated in normal medias. Only video games can create this unique experience. Every individual has their own journey exploring the system/mechanics you place. Unlike in a movie or other forms of writing, they watch or read of your character's feats, strengths and weaknesses, and most likely they don't have to understand it as much. It's the person creating it that does. Players have to understand their limitations, their character's weaknesses and strengths, and they have to at least somehow understand their opposition and how to deal with them. Implementing interesting and coherent limitations means players have to be smarter to attain the prize, whether that be beating the final boss or winning the match for them on their team. They have to physically engage in your creation, and only they can influence the gameplay. Games like Dead by Daylight, an asymmetric horror game which features 4 survivors and 1 killer all controlled by real people in an online lobby, has an interesting dynamic where understanding your opponent's arsenal, whether you're the killer or survivor, aids in your winning. This also helps you capitalise on your opponent's character's shortcomings or mistakes. However, balance has always been a problem in Dead by Daylight, and if you feel helpless and unfulfilled in your role, it becomes frustrating and demoralising, and that's the last thing you want your game to make your player feel. I find the best games let players min-max because of the way they've been created. Take Kingdom Hearts 2 for example. Is the player the beginner run-through player who wants an easier experience, who when hitting certain levels can beat their opposition with more ease so they can enjoy the story more? Or are they the level 1 critical mode player, someone who's played the game multiple times and wants every encounter to be a test of wit, skill and knowledge in the game's growing arsenal to take down their opponents in flashy and satisfying ways? Both are valid ways to play, but most importantly, both ways are fun. If you're seeing parallels to what Sanderson says, then you'll be right. However, when it comes to the gameplay, it's not the character's limits, it's the player's limits and feats that they can perform with the system you have provided them. If an idea you have is great for your story and world that lends itself to be featured in the gameplay, and it makes for a less fun and engaging experience for the player, then you should, in my opinion, ditch it and maybe try to create a workaround. Fun and gameplay is of the utmost importance because at the end of the day, you are creating a game and want it to retain as much fun and replayability in it as you can. In writing and stories, even in video game stories, characters and their limitations what make them who they are. However, when taking this into just the gameplay, it's about the player, what they will do in the situation, what they can do in the situation, the limitations you're giving them, and what they will and won't use in the situation. A movie asks what that character would do, a video game asks what that player would do. If you're going to have a world full of magic, you need to take in and consider what that will do to the society and its people. Examples I can think of is in Avatar: The Last Airbender. At the North Pole, the culture where they can manipulate the water element by creating water-based attacks and can turn it into ice. The whole city is made of ice and has these amazing canals and walkways all made of this material. Plus you have Umoshu and they have their delivery service entirely done by people earthbending the parcels around the city. This is an example of great world building. Explaining what they can do is pretty simple and can be summed up in a few sentences, but the way they've implemented it into the world they have created can be seen wherever you go in the Avatar universe. It makes the world feel authentic and alive and really brings in the audience. When talking about expanding and not adding, Avatar: The Last Airbender has blood bending, which when there's a full moon, a waterbender can control a person's muscles, using the idea that blood is mostly water-based, which is not only interesting, but well implemented, as it makes sense to the lore of the show, and makes sense logically too. They've expanded more than they've added to the magic system, not plucked something out of thin air and slapped it on. It's true to the system they have created with its limits and feats well explained. Sanderson talks about how you need to ask the questions that come from how your magic system will affect the world as a whole. A video game series that does this well in my opinion is Dead Rising. In the first video game it shows you how the zombies come to be and why killing the queen insects kill a certain amount in a radius around where it was killed. A simple age-old concept that brings improvised weaponry to the front, making for comical and fun gameplay exploring them all, which is not only a great homage to Dawn of the Dead, but a great place as the type of weaponry and items you can use is almost limitless, whilst also adding to it with the use of the queen insects. They also have a great story that has mystery on how the outbreak was caused, and your job as a reporter is wanting to find out what actually happened, eventually finding out by following the game and its cases all up to the last day. This brings us to Dead Rising 2 with Chuck Green. Gameplay wise, they have added combo weapons, which I thought was an amazing idea. Creative fun new ways to slay the horde ahead of you. But the story and the world created is still interesting. Here the zombies are integrated into society. There is a show where you can earn money that is aired on TV where you kill the zombies. There's even a group of zombie rights activists who think that the show is wrong in treating what were humans inhumanely, seeing that they are being exploited on TV. They also use the idea of the queens to create Zombrex, an immensely expensive medicine which stops someone from turning into a zombie for 24 hours, in which they will need to take the medicine again. Here they have introduced a unique way to how zombies are made, but also have added interesting dynamics, asking, what if zombies were integrated into normal society and eventually have been around for a long time? Also using the queens as an interesting way to help people affected by the zombie virus to stay alive and have something similar to a cure. Adding enough to not over encumber the audience, but also what they do add is interesting and well integrated. It feels like the universe is always moving and has evolved with the circumstances that they have put into the world. They've expanded, not added. You don't need hundreds of powers to make intriguing gameplay or story, just like you don't need hundreds of characters to create a great story. As long as you have a core that is strong and explored well in these elements, you will have a satisfied audience who can connect to your world, its characters, and have a great feel for the gameplay as well. Like Sanderson said, it's okay to go big, it's okay to go epic, but be sure to go deep as well. In video games, specifically the gameplay, I feel this law can be overlooked if the gameplay benefits depending on the type of game you are creating. In a magic system that would be the elements for example, the lore should be more adhered to, as it would feel cheap and lazy otherwise when talking about the story aspect of your creation. However, in games like New Super Mario Bros., like when you're in a multiplayer game and you die, you get bubbled back in. Doesn't ever say why this happens or anything like that, but it helps bring the player in the action in a neat, cute, fun way, where shaking the Wiimote pushes you into their direction. Here it's got a simple purpose and is kinda slapped on if you think about it, but is forgiven as the system to how Mario works is quite silly. I mean, he dresses as a penguin and slides in his plumber belly. He throws snowballs at enemies and it freezes them. That's part of his power. The purpose of it being there is to keep the gameplay fresh, innovative and fun. It doesn't feel cheap, it makes the game more fun for the players. Expand on what you have before you add something new. Gameplay and fun over story. However, lore-heavy projects need to attain a sense of continuity and should consider the story elements much more while still keeping gameplay and fun factors prominent. Sanderson's laws of magic can be applied to video games, specifically the gameplay, in many ways. The main objective of this video is to inspire creators and devs, to get my thoughts out there on this subject and to help format and organise their universe's mechanics in a way that aids the story and world building elements. Using other magic systems from all types of media to demonstrate my point and how they help convey the world they represent, its characters and their potential, whilst also showing what it means for your video game or games. Concerning the gameplay of your project foremost. Whatever magic system you create that supports your video game, the aim is to have the story, world building and gameplay elements come together in harmony, providing a fun world to explore and discover with interesting power dynamics, with an intriguing setup and characters that create a satisfying playthrough that presents the characters' motives, their beliefs and their ethics in the story. Not all games will need something as strict as a magic system to uphold its values, but for the ones that could benefit from this, I hope it makes creating your projects more fulfilling and helps your creative endeavours, whether you use this to help create something that potentially isn't even a video game. Thank you for taking the time to watch me talk about this. If you have any questions or things you want to discuss in the comments, I would love to read it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe for future content. Arossavi out.